Welcome to another random video of Mona's. So this is going to be another random video, but a good one. And sometimes I don't know why I do certain videos. Sometimes I just get led to make a video um to talk about certain things, and later on down the road I'm like, "Oh, okay, I know why I was led to do that." So in my previous also, I'm a blackhead again. I don't know. I got my Morticia vibes going on. I tell everybody I have a Wednesday Addams soul, so I'm back black. I'm back to black. But yeah, this is just another random video, but a good one. Um, so yeah. Um, I want to start off this video. Well, let me go back. So in my previous video, I had mentioned that I had graduated from my 12-step program. And I also stated that I would be doing certain videos, one of them being a video on my 12-step process along with talking about trauma. So, and the symptoms that I had as a result of the thing being the trauma that happened in early childhood, because that's where a lot of our bullshit comes from, is our early childhood trauma. So, um, I want to start out with a quote by Carl Jung. Um, Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. At all counts, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well meant intentions. This is really a really awesome book. A wizard actually lent me this book. His name is, I'll give him a shout out, Puka Wiz. Thank you, Puka Wiz, for lending me this book. I am just starting it, but it is a very powerful read. It's called Meeting the Shadow, The Hidden Power of the Dark Side of Human Nature. So I wanted to start out with that quote. Just to go back to the beginning, we're going to start with my personal childhood trauma. But I want to preface, or I want to state by saying that I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Dr. Gabor Mate. He has a lot of videos on YouTube, but he is a trauma specialist, childhood trauma specialist, and a lot of um, his videos and his books really helped me understand myself and what was occurring within myself. So before I get into all of this, I want to talk a little bit about trauma, because everyone has different um, perceptions in their head, or different definitions of what trauma is. So trauma isn't the actual thing that happened to you. It is what happened inside of you as a result of that thing that happened to you. So, for instance, you know, every single one of us, our perceptions are different, our experiences are different, our childhoods are different, our nervous systems are different, how we process information is different. So, for instance, you can have two people who had the same childhood, but you ask one, and their perception of their childhood was different from the other. So we all process information differently. Something that could have been traumatic for you may not have been traumatic for me. So, with that being said, trauma is what happened inside of you as a result of whatever happened to you. Um, so I just wanted to state that. Um, so I'm not like these other YouTubers or people who put together these intricate videos and have everything printed out and have to say the proper lingo or whatever. I just get in front of the camera when I feel led to, and just ad lib everything. So, childhood trauma and its impact. So, I'm going to go to the beginning. Um, I didn't have the best childhood, and let me just say, for this video, I'm just going to be stating facts. This video isn't to do smear campaigns on certain people if they may come up. This is my story. This is my perception. This is my life. And this is how I perceived everything according to my own personal experience that I experienced with this nervous system and through these two eyes. So yeah. So I did not have the best childhood. My father, or should I say my sperm donor, my father wasn't there growing up. He had his own, and he still probably is, fighting his own. Well, I'll leave that for another video. But yeah, my father wasn't there for me or my mother when I was um, a little girl. And I'll insert some pictures here, so you can see me as a little girl with my father. So, and what I came from in my family, there was, I come from a lot of, so my father, just to give a little bit of his background, my father was adopted. So, I always grew up thinking that my grandmother was not my grandmother by blood, but my grandmother because she adopted my dad when he was small. Come to find out through the grapevine and through a lot of whispers in the family, my grandmother was actually, in reality, my great grandmother, blood great grandmother. So to give you a little background, my father didn't come across this information until he was older. So my father's mother, which was my biological grandmother that I never met, was, of course, the daughter of my great grandmother. So what had happened is my great grandmother had a child out of wedlock at a very early age. And I believe she was married at a young age and then got remarried. And her husband had inappropriate relations with my great grandmother's daughter, got her impregnated. And so they had to cover it up. And my great grandmother ended up adopting her grandson. And so they tried to, back in the day, having a child out of wedlock was, you were of the devil. But anyway, so all of that came out in the wash, I'd probably say about 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. Um, so I know that had to be traumatic for my father to learn that all of that information. So yeah, anyway, I might go, yeah, I know you're probably sitting there thinking like, what? So I hope that makes sense. But anyway, yeah, so my great grandmother had to adopt my father to have all of that stuff covered up. They told him that he another story, and it was just a big mess. But anyway, so my biological father was never there for me growing up. He left my mother and I. Well, I was sick. I was a young girl. I don't even remember my father ever being around. So my mother also had issues of her own. I'm not a licensed clinician, but I would say that my mother did suffer a lot from depression, anxiety, codependency. She always put men before me growing up. So, you know, my childhood wasn't the best. Um, Also, growing up, um, my grandfather on my mother's side, um, I do remember that there was a lot of inappropriate things going on in regards to my grandfather when he would watch me growing up. There was some sexual abuse. I did recall that. Um, I was, I think those memories, because sometimes you can repress memories when you are young. It's a defense mechanism. Sometimes that are and excuse me guys if I'm not coming up with the proper terms for these things, but it's a defense mechanism sometimes that our bodies do for us to keep us safe. So I do remember when I was about 26, 27, I was in therapy and a lot of those memories came back. So, you know, along with my father not being there, my mother always being in my mother was growing up how I remember my mother. She was always sleeping. She was always emotionally absent. And don't get me wrong, my mother was not a bad person. I just feel like she was also battling her own trauma and didn't have any help or anyone to help her understand what was occurring. And if I were to guess, since my grandfather did those things to me when I was a little girl, that probably happened to her as well when she was a little girl. So I can only imagine, you know, being married to a man and finding out that he's having an affair when you're pregnant or right after you have the baby, and then him leaving and all of this, and he's being abusive to you along with a lot of other things that my mother was dealing with. I don't have any animosity toward my mother. Now, just to let you guys know, my mother did pass away in 2010, so she has not been here for 15 years. But yeah, so my mother had problems of her own, and I was very neglected when I was a little girl. Um, and that, getting into, young, becoming an adult and having to, I can look back on my life and see how that dramatically affected me, my self worth. I had abandonment issues. Also, my mother got remarried when I was 7 to my stepfather. Um, and he was very abusive, not only to me, but to my mother. And that furthered, the perpetual state of trauma responses. So, you know, I didn't really have a good childhood. And so that really caused a lot of symptoms to occur. In my last video, I was saying that, you have all of these symptoms as a result of the thing. So the thing when I was little was, sexual abuse, neglect, more abuse. My stepfather was physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive. So, all of those things. And let me just also say that everyone deals with their trauma differently. It's funny how it manifests in different people. So I'll get to that later on, I guess, in this video. But the way it manifested in me was bad relationships, self-worth issues. I was an addict. I was an addict. And let me just state one thing for the record. Just because you have a prescription from a licensed doctor, does that mean you are not a drug addict? There are so many people out here that want to point their fingers on people on the street who are doing meth or they're doing this or they're doing that, but they go get their prescriptions filled. They think that because they get their prescriptions prescribed to them by a doctor. They're, that um they're not a drug addict. I had my drugs prescribed to me by a licensed doctor. I was a drug addict. So, let me just state that, just because you have a licensed doctor prescribing you things does not mean you are not a drug addict. These doctors don't care about you. That's a whole other video. So, my symptoms, it resulted in addiction, bad relationships because I had no self worth. I had abandonment issues. I was narcissistic. That's a whole nother thing, too. There's a lot of women out here who are narcissistic. Now, I could talk about men too, but since I'm a woman, I'm, you know, but holding on to people because I was scared to be alone and making their life totally miserable. Being narcissistic, being emotionally manipulative. Yeah, those were all symptoms that I had to deal with as a result of my own trauma, growing up. And it, like I said, it shaped my identity. It caused me to go down a bad path for a while. I never had a good example of what a good man should be. I mean, my father wasn't even there growing up. Um, my stepfather was not a good example. I had my grandfather was not a good example. So I had all of these, examples of growing up. But and let me just say, a lot of these things that we go through in our childhood, we think that those are normal. You grow up in an abusive home. Usually, that's why you repeat the cycle because you think that is normal. Um, all of that stuff that I went through was not normal. And I just realized that in the last 5 years, especially going through my 12-step process. I was repeating cycles. I was repeating the cycle of my mother, seeing her have men be abusive to her and thinking that is normal. That is not normal. So, and let's not talk about, mental health. You know, Before I had a grip, before I started listening to Dr. Gabor Mate, before I started listening to Dr. Vaknin, there's other people on YouTube. Before I started really going down my self journey healing, or my healing journey about 4 or 5 years ago, I got a really bad back injury. I got COVID, literally almost died. It destroyed my health at the time. And I just remember laying in bed. I was in an unhappy marriage. It was very toxic. And I just remember thinking to myself, something has got to change or I'm going to die. And I just remember getting on YouTube, listening to Dolores Cannon, especially Dr. Gabor Mate. And I started to really start realizing these things about not only the world, but about myself. A lot of the times, we want to point fingers. Oh, you hurt me. You did this or you did that. But we fail to see the dark shadow that lies within, that thing that's within us that is causing us to do these things, these horrible things, think these horrible thoughts. And, you know, um, I finally got out of the toxic marriage about 3 years ago. And you reach a point, well, I can only speak for myself. I reached a point to where I was so tired of going on the hamster wheel of being fucked up that I was like, I am going to find a cure for whatever this is at any cost. I am so tired. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of my narcissistic behavior. I'm tired of going around on this hamster wheel of just fucked upness. And so that's what led me to get into a 12-step program. And, it was the best thing that I ever did for my children. It was the best thing that I ever did for myself. To be able to be sober minded, to be healthy, to be able to, you know, actually be an individual, to actually love being in solitude and not have to have someone to validate me. It feels great to be where I am. And, you know, people see that this person that I am, and it's really been a rough road, and I only have a couple of people that are close to me that really know the deep dark void that I had to go through these last couple years to get to where I'm at. And I want to say that I am thankful. I'm thankful every day for that above, for destroying all the illusions that were around me. Um, like I said, I had to go through that up there. Had to take me through some dark places to get to where I am right now. And I am so thankful that I had to walk through my own hell to get to where I'm at right now. Um, it's been a journey for real, and the journey doesn't stop, you know. Um, so yeah, I'm just like I said, I'm just rambling on this video. I like on my previous video, I promised you guys that I would go more in depth about my 12-step journey and about things that I've had to endure and deal with. Um, but let me see if I'm missing anything. Like I said, I'm still healing, I'm still learning, and I'm still growing. It doesn't stop for me. Um, so let's see. So I just wanted to say that it's good to try to understand yourself. Um, I know me, I had to go into solitude to drown out all of the voices around me just to hear that inner voice that I had. A lot of people don't get that, you know. We're so busy with day-to-day life, we're so busy with trying to pay bills, we're so busy with this, we're so busy with that, that we forget that, you know, you've got to take time for yourself. You've got to take time to nourish yourself. I'm not talking about really in a materialistic way, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. That's very important. Even from the food that you put in your bodies. Um, like I said, I am so grateful to be sober. Um, to know what it's like not to pop a pill, to know what it's like not to take a drink, to be able to sit with my emotions, to be able to think clearly, to be able to process things clearly. I don't think people know how important that is. And until you're at that point, you are really just going to be running around in circles. I mean, alcohol, pills, drugs, yeah, they may drown that out for a time being, but it's just going to perpetuate the fucked up pattern that you're on. And, you know, I hate to see people there, but I've been there before. So, yeah, just like I said, I'm not really sure why I did this video, but hopefully it will resonate with someone. Um Moving on. Also, I'm so excited that it's about to be fall. I'm already decorating my house for Halloween. And also I'm going to be doing more um art see things. So I'm about to redo my dining room table back here, and I'm about to be redoing this other table. And I'm gonna be you can follow me on that process. I'll probably start that next weekend because I'm really gonna do some fire ass shit to this bookshelf. I just don't know I know what I'm gonna do with it. I got this picture in my mind, and so yeah. Um. Anywho, I think there was another quote that I'll probably end this on. Okay. So I don't know if anybody has heard of Doris Lessing, but this is a quote I just wanted to end this on. Yet there is a mystery here, and it is not one that I understand. Without this sting of otherness, of even the vicious, without the terrible energies of the underside of health, sanity, sense, then nothing works or can work. I tell you that goodness, what we in our ordinary daylight selves call goodness, the ordinary, the decent, these are nothing without the hidden powers that pour forth continually from their shadow sides.